So even though weddings are not directly connected to business, they might just be one of the most important marketing strategies ever. Let me give you some lore about me and Sofia Richie. So without Sofia Richie, I don't know if this series that we're all on YouTube would be happening. A couple of years ago, I'm sure if you were tapped into pop culture in any capacity, you would know that Sofia Richie got married. And back then I was on TikTok as like a regular civilian, not really doing much content. And I watched the rollout and all the content that came from Sofia Richie's wedding and all the commentary and the discussion. And I made a video about it, about how it was such an incredible and fluid process to helping cement her as this it girl status. And obviously for the rest of for the following 12 to 18 months, there was a conversation about clean girl aesthetic, rich girl aesthetic, quiet luxury, trading up your previous guy for someone who treats you better, all these different things that were all associated or seemed to have stemmed from or be amplified by her. So after I made this video, I started to really get into my TikTok bag and was making like a couple of viral videos all about marketing. So it feels like a full circle moment a couple of years later to be talking about this topic because I think it's so important. And you might be wondering, okay, how can a wedding be a marketing strategy? Like you might be thinking, I understand the wedding industry is booming, et cetera, but like, isn't that weird to connect something that's so important and so intimate to something like marketing or business, which I guess some people sometimes question. You know, we don't always feel great when we talk about, making money off something. But before I get into that, I think it's fair to say and obvious to say, but let's just kind of clear the air. Sofia Richie's wedding was a big wedding, but it wasn't the only one. History for decades, to be honest, even for centuries, has been filled with weddings that have shaped the cultural consciousness. In recent times, a couple of weddings that have been in the forefront for me, and I'm going to explore them in more detail in terms of case studies, are the Ambani wedding, Meghan and Harry, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and also other big weddings that may have shaped your world, like your wedding or your best friend's wedding, or a wedding that you saw from someone that you kind of are obsessed with on Instagram and you just followed every single Instagram story. Weddings really shape our idea of aspiration, of what's possible. And there are loads and loads of eyes on them. But like I said, it's important for me to highlight that this is not a new phenomenon. Decades and decades ago, in many different regions, in different countries and cultures around the world, weddings have always been strategic. They have been to connect and strengthen families, nations, trade routes, societal connections. All of that happens in a wedding setting, right? That has always been the case. I think in the West, however, in recent years, so when I say recent years, I say in the last maybe even 40, 50 years, not even last 100 years, but in this modern age, we have positioned weddings and marriage as something that's only about love. So to talk about these two things in the same context might be making you think why is she saying a wedding is a marketing strategy? That's weird. But actually, in the context of the world and society, my brain's no, but weddings are spiritual, but that's a different topic. In the context of weddings and society and the advancement of how people build cultures, they have always been a moment of fusing together and growth, which makes sense, right? Because two families or two people are coming together to become one and advance and all that good stuff. So I think for me, especially coming from a culture that also loves weddings and it's very celebratory, flamboyance is important. Having, as many people in the room, whether you know them or not, is a moment. I've been really thinking deeply about the transformative nature of weddings and how that can feed and help your personal brand or your business. So let's go back to some of the weddings that I mentioned and let's break down why that could be valuable to you as a business owner, as maybe someone who doesn't own a business, but you just want to be more well-known in your social circle, as someone who might be building a personal brand, as a guest. And maybe we'll touch on vendors, but I feel like if you're a wedding vendor or someone who works in the industry, you've got your stuff. You kind of know what's happening. So I've got 5 things that I've pulled out. I think there's actually way more, but you can't spill all your secrets at once, that you should be thinking about when it comes to using not just your wedding, but your engagement, all the activities that happen prior to getting married and all the way through, right? And I think it goes without saying that in society, we've always had this obsession with love. I know people who, they make all sorts of content, but the minute they post a partner, that always gets better engagement. We love love. And a wedding, I guess, symbolizes the culmination of that. So 5 things to think about when it comes to maybe a wedding that is coming up for you, or as you're thinking and dreaming about your wedding to come, or family members, is that number 1, obviously at weddings, all eyes are on you, and they absolutely should be. And that is your moment to drive virality. So in a previous episode with Fisayo Longa, we talked about this idea of, if you're just starting, you want to just get as many eyes on you as possible. You don't want to be over picky. You just want to find a path to reach more people. And a wedding is a great moment for that, especially on the internet, because we're obsessed with it. So recently, a creator called Jazz got married on TikTok. If you're on TikTok remotely, you will know this. And she covered in a vlog every single moment of the wedding, up until the point where her and her husband were saying to the camera and saying to all of us following, like, we're about to walk down the aisle. It was that detailed, and it was live. There wasn't that much of a gap from it actually happening and it going live. And since then, obviously her following has grown, her engagement has like skyrocketed, and she already was a big creator, and she's even bigger than she was previously. She has had loads of people online talk about her, but she has also been covered in news outlets, and she's had the opportunity to have another bump. And as a creator, that is going to immediately mean money for her, right? So if you're a brand, and if you're a business, or if you're a business owner and you're getting married, or you're involved in a wedding, I would start to think of, how can I leverage this moment where all these eyes are on me, or all these eyes, or I'm in the outskirts of the effect of all these eyes. How can I leverage that to serve a longer term purpose outside of just the attention, or outside of just the moment for me to enjoy with my loved ones? If you want to. Some people may be listening to this and think like, I just want it to be intimate, I don't want anybody to be involved. That's absolutely fine too. And I think it's really important for us to know ourselves and know what we want, which parts of us we want to share and which parts we don't. I also think that while I've given that example of Jazz and as a creator and being viral, I think the same thing happens whether or not, this is so funny, whether or not you're a creator. So a couple of years ago, a close friend of mine's family member got married. And we went, it was lovely. And it was actually it was casual, as casual as you can make it in the context. I don't want to give too much information, but the long story short is that we then went shopping one day, and we heard these women talking, and they were like, did you hear about that party in XYZ venue? And we overheard, and we found it really funny, because the venue they spoke of was actually the name of the house where they lived. They got married in their family home. And it just was a symbol to me of the fact that, and these people are not online, they're not creators or anything, but it's a symbol of the fact that actually when you, in a moment like a wedding, like I said, everyone's eyes are on you, whether it's digital or whether it's societal. So if it matters to you to be known to certain people, or to have your profile raised, which it could be helpful, because let's say, for example, maybe you're starting a B2B business and you're not necessarily on social media, but you know that you're going to make a cold call to someone tomorrow. It's likely that if the wedding hits the right people, when you make that cold call, your name will be front of mind. And marketing is all about being able to recall. So I think I've talked about this either in this series or in marketing school, which is like my course, and which is about 5 or 6 weeks, depending on when you joined. And we kind of run through like my foundational formulas and like things I think about when it comes to building like a clear marketing strategy. But marketing is all about recall. So you might have seen these ads on YouTube and Google, which says like, have you seen an ad from so-and-so brand in the last XYZ days? And they are trying to figure out if you can remember all the things you've seen. We always say in marketing, it takes 7 touches for someone to make a sale, or to like secure a customer for the long term. Someone needs to see or interact with you 7 times. Now, I think with the internet, that kind of things have changed, but let's just use that for argument's sake. Someone has to touch what you're doing a couple of times before they are in your inner circle, basically. And a wedding is the best way to do that, because everyone's talking about it. And also it's a social event, right? So it makes sense that everyone's talking about it. We also talk in marketing about this idea of a network effect. So rather than if I said to someone, hey, can you buy my laptop? But then if I said, hey, I'm going to give you 50% off this laptop if you tell your 10 friends to buy this laptop, you get a network effect, because I'm talking to one person, but that person's talking to 10 people. The same thing happens at a wedding. You have 200 people at your wedding, but they know and regularly speak to another 20. So you're getting 20 times 200. You're then being in the mouths and discussions of 4,000 people, right? This is how I think about things, which, you know, Make of that what you will, but let's move on to the next one. So it allows you, similarly, and what I sort of said about with cold calls, it allows you to enter new markets and build new connections. The Ambani wedding, and if you were following me on Instagram at the time, you would know I had a lot of commentary about it because I found it the rollout of that wedding was extremely intentional. And people wondered, why is everyone covering this wedding? Like, why have they got so much attention? Aren't they rich enough? Why would they want the attention if they've got the money? And I think it's really important to remember that as humans, like if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is like a way of thinking about the different needs of human beings, shelter and the things that money can provide, which is like shelter and then like enjoyment, are actually quite low on the bottom. Higher up on the hierarchy of needs are things like belonging, recognition, and like self-actualization. The more people know that your family is doing this event, sometimes for some people that can be value adding. I think I asked a question on my stories, which was like, if your wedding happened but no one talked about it, did you have a wedding? And for some people, it's worth the investment. So you might be thinking, what's the investment? It's the investment in the content creators. It's an investment in the media partners. And I know this for a fact that there were media partners hired to cover that wedding. It's an investment in inviting the Kardashians when they'd never met them before, and the wedding being featured in the new version show of the Kardashians. If you think all of that happened for free or like it just happened, you need to think again. That was absolutely strategic, absolutely PR, which is fine. Because I think in life, like, you get what you want when you're intentional, right? So you may as well put all your resources and your time, at whatever's at your disposal, into getting the results that you want. Okay, point 3. Weddings also allow you to rewrite your story / own your story. When I think about Meghan Markle and Harry, their wedding was an inflection point for this relationship. Now, obviously, this is a royal wedding, so you kind of need to have that moment in order to move forward as a couple. There's, different expectations. But from after first of all, the coverage of that wedding, which is normal, royals, the fact that we even cover royal weddings like this speaks volumes. But all the interviews, the shows, the things that came out of the back of that followed that moment. And that's something to think about when you may not be rewriting your story for like a global audience, but maybe you want to just be seen as like the friend that, maybe people thought before you didn't really have a wide network, but your wedding is a good moment to show people that you do. It can be as simple as that. And it can be as simple as that. It can be as grand as going on national TV and changing the positioning of your whole brand and showing that you're a united front. But that is like a great moment to do so. Number 4, which is connected to this, it assists in rebranding you or creating a turn in your brand. So I guess the first one was about your narrative and who you are and how you show up in the world, which is connected to your brand. When I think about when Jazz Tukes got married, she is kind of from the early 2010 era of like fashion models, right? We are now in 2025. When she got married, that wasn't a time where she was like at that, in the height of the zeitgeist. That moment and the photo of her in the church and the dress. And bear in mind, by the way, I'm not even someone who is like, if you couldn't show me 10 wedding dresses and I would know which celebrity, like I'm not a wedding specialist, if that makes sense, or like a wedding passion. Like that's not my passion, but I remember that because if you were someone who cares about visuals and aesthetics, or you also care about fashion to an extent and design, you do remember. And I think as a model, obviously models in general, especially like supermodels or people who've worked with high fashion houses, they are supposed to be seen as having basically good taste, which I don't think that was ever a risk for her ever. Like no one ever doubted that. But that was like a moment that reignited her at the front of the cultural consciousness. And again, it's actually happening again through her TikTok, which is like a whole separate topic for another day. Another example of this is like Solange Knowles and her marriage that she had and her wedding and that photo of like her and all of the bridal party like spread out. People have replicated that for years to come, right? So she's actually created a way of existing and a new creative direction that has actually shaped culture. If that's a goal and if that's a passion point for you, then that is a great opportunity to do so and to pour all your creative energy into it, especially because for most of us, like weddings will be maybe one of the most complicated or most long or most expensive projects that we'll ever work on personally. So you may as well use that to kind of show your creative prowess and do something that stands out. Okay, and then number 5, well, actually kind of connected to that, I'm going to kind of blend them together, is it does establish your taste level. So again, if you are someone who maybe you always wear like relaxed clothes in the daytime and you feel like people don't get to see the other side of you. This is a moment to do that. Maybe you have a very serious, and this is actually something that happened with me and some of my friends that got married, serious corporate jobs, serious jobs that everybody thinks they're kind of like straight. But in the wedding, there was a lot of art. There was a lot of the ability for everybody to paint and participate, which allowed them to show a creative side of them, and also just exercise their creative juices and unlock that in other people. So those are some thoughts. I think there's so much more. I think the potential is huge, basically. Long story short, we know the value of the wedding industry. We know how much wedding vendors make. And I think that if you are involved in some capacity, you also have that opportunity, even if you're not the bride or groom, if you are maybe a close friend. So I think about, okay, this was a creator, but if we go back to Sophia Richie's wedding, I think there was a creator called Jake Shane, I believe, he was a friend, right? But he also experienced like a little bit of growth off the back of being an attendee, right? If you're able to hold your phone the right way and cover the wedding, then you're also like benefiting. And if you don't have a business, like I said, this is not about if you have something to sell tomorrow. This might just be about how you want to be perceived by your friends, by your family, maybe by your town, by your country. If you have that impact, it doesn't have to be in the context of now I'm going to launch a business that sells XYZ. So I'm excited to continue the study of weddings and the transformative nature of them when it comes to like your longer term goals outside of the immediate marriage. And one of the things that I've been incubating in the background and I've worked on and off for like the last year or so is how to actually work with brides, with grooms around how they can use their wedding as a vehicle or channel through which to reach some of their other personal goals. So I am excited to launch, or soft launch, let's say we're soft launching it, a referral only service that focuses on providing consultancy for people who are getting married at my company, Inner Circle. So if you are a bride or groom, I would say get in touch, but it is referral only, just while we continue to incubate what we do and how we can make the most of it. Also, just because like life is very busy and this actually feels like a little bit of a pet project for me. I just think it's fun, and I always have been very fascinated by how much marketing has an impact everywhere. But yeah, I'm excited to work with more people and see how we can help them achieve some of those goals as well. But I would love to know what you think, because I feel like this might be a bit of a polarizing episode. So do you agree? Do you disagree? Are there any other examples of weddings that you have enjoyed looking at from afar or actually being part of? Let me know.